Begin the current Daf, Bava Metzia Daf, being 7 lines down at the top of the Yomid, where the Gemara continues with this theme, which is obviously going to go into the second parak, in the famous parak in Bava Metzia of Elam Metzias, where we're talking about this idea, which really opened up Shnai Meichsin, which says, we're talking about the halachas of Metzias of found objects, which this next Mishnah continues with the same theme regarding the halacha of Metzia and who has the ability to be a kohen first. Throughout the entire world. So discussing today's daf are the king of Chatzar, regarding the courtyard of a person acquiring, what are the limitations, what is required. Shlomi does it require even if he's not aware? Does it require that he stands there on the side of the field to make it into a Chatzah HaMishtameres? Makna, is it different when someone else is transferring it to you? Can you agav the halacha of acquiring things through the medium of a field, Allah of Chalipin, of that you could be kind of when you take one thing from one person, that automatically it transfers the other item to the other person, and Allah of Tevas that you don't own certain things, but you have the ability to choose who gets it. That is, does that have Allah of a monetary status or not? The Allah of Shikha, someone forgets a bundle, what's considered Shikha? When does it become Shikha? Shikha Se'ir, if you're in town already, now that you forgot it now, does that make it shikha what's in the field? And Allah, the Isra Bal Tashra, you now go back and reclaim the bundles that were forgotten in the field. So begin the current Daf Yomi, we begin on the Mishnah. Says the Mishnah, let's say he sees people running after a found object. Achar tzvi shaver, after a deer that has a broken leg, let's say, which, as Rashi points out, is similar to Mציעא because it can't run, and it's protected in the field. If others are not going to take it, it's almost like stuck over there. Or acha gazel shlei parchu. Let's say after birds that can't fly. V'amini says zachsli sadai, meaning this guy, it's in his field. There's a bird running through. There's a bird that's hopping through his field, or a deer that has a broken leg that's walking through his field. So in any of these cases, if he says zachsli sadai, he says, okay, I want my field to merit it for me, so zachsalai, it merits it for him. Now Tyson the Masal Zachsalai says it would seem, even though he doesn't say zachsalai, it's gonna acquire it for him. As the Gemara said in Daf Yud, if the Rabban instituted something should acquire, even if you don't say who cares, and don't say that over there is because he fell on it, so he revealed his intention that he wants to acquire it. But over here, who would say he wants to acquire it? To the contrary, it sounds like from the Gemara over there that if he didn't fall on it, he would actually acquire it better, even though he doesn't say I want to acquire it. And also, Rabbi Shloimy says, obviously you see that even though he doesn't say kani, and here, why are we saying then, so why does the Mishnah say the words that he said, I want it to be zeh for me? That's his taste, that's only for the sefer, to say in the next case, that even when he says he wants it, but since it's running in the normal way, he's not going to acquire it. But that's what Taisa says you don't have to say zachsli sadeh. If there's a deer that's in your field, that is like a Mציעא, that it can't really run so well, and if no one's going to take it, it's really going to stay there in your field automatically acquires it for you before those other guys who he sees are running after this Mציעא in this field. Now, what happens if what happens if the deer is running in the normal way? Which Taisus really points out in the Maskal Tzvirat Kedarka, says the truth is, even if it's a deer that's broken, if you would run after it, you wouldn't be able to catch it, is the same thing. It's just talking about the normative is that when it runs the normal way, then you can't catch it. So either one. So if let's say the deer is running a normal way, or these birds are able to fly. Vami says, Zachsli saw that I want my field to acquire it for me. He hasn't said anything. That's not a Mציעא. That's not something that you have the ability to acquire just by being in your field. And therefore, although you said that, and that's what Tais says, that's why we said Va'omar Zachsali, is for the case of Zeva, that doesn't help, and you haven't acquired it. So the Gemara explains, for the halacha, the reisha, that we said that your field acquires it for you. I'm going to read the Mishmul. He says that but this is only if he's standing there on the side of his field. By standing over there, that gives it the ability for the field to acquire from him. Says the Gemara, really? Particularly Sedehu? Why doesn't this field acquire it for him automatically? Said, what do you mean? A person's courtyard, he said, acquires him without his awareness. Why does he have to be standing there on the side of the field? When we say that, that's by a safeguarded courtyard. Then it's automatic that it works for you. But a courtyard that's not protected, then only if you're standing there on the side of the field, then yes, because as Rashi explains, now it's mishtameres through you. It has to be protected. It has to be something that has the ability to say that this is yours.
What if it's fenced in?
Right. So that's chatzah mishtameres. That would work even without you there. But if it's not protected, then only if you're there, then it's protected through your presence. But if not, then not. So the Gemara says, how do you know that if you have a court that is not protected, that if you're there, yes, if not, not, to tell them the Brisa. Brisa is Yomid be'ir. So this is a little bit more of a complex halacha that we're opening up over here. If someone's standing in town, they said, look, you're there, and I know, there's a bundle I have in the field that I put there, knowingly. I relied on the workers that they're going to bring it back to town. Now, Pa'ilim shakchuhu. The workers forgot it. Lo yehi shikha. If they subsequently forget about it, which actually tries to discuss exactly who's forgetting about it, it's a little bit complex, but he says, I don't want this to become a forgotten bundle. Okay. Says the Brisa, and we're going to read this again. It's a little bit of a complex, but yochel lo yehi shikha. You would think, okay, it's not going to become a forgotten bundle. It says in the pasuk in Devarim, you're going to forget the bundle in the field, which teaches us besada v'shachachta, meaning if you forgot it when you were coming from the field, then it's considered shikha, like the forgotten bundle which you have to leave for the poor. You can't go back and take it. V'loy be'ir, but not if you forgot it from when you already entered into town, into the city. So the Gemara says, wait a second, how are you reading this even? Hagufa kasha, it's an internal contradiction. Amrit, you start off saying, you would think it's not going to be considered as a forgotten bundle, which obviously you're trying to tell me, have a shikha. Even though the guy says, the bundle I left for them, I don't want it to become shikha, you would think it's not going to be shikha. And we're teaching you Talmud Leiman, meaning that it's going to be shikha. And you can't go take it. But then Manasim Gemara, then the teaching teaches us a pasuk, that in the field is when the shikha. V'loy be'ir, not in town. In town, it cannot become shikha. Amaloi have a shikha. Obviously, you're telling me that once he's already in town, it cannot become shikha. So, yes or no? You're starting off saying like it is shikha, then you end off saying that it sounds like it's not shikha. So Allah Hakam, or rather says what you have to read the Brisa must be like this. Bisade, when the man is still in the field, the bundle that's shachuach mi'ikarai, that's from the beginning forgotten. That in the beginning the worker forgot the bundle. That have a shikha. That's going to be considered as forgotten bundle that you cannot go back for. But zachar. But if let's say he knew about this bundle, he put it there consciously, and at the end it was forgotten through the workers. No, then ain't shikha. Then that's not going to be considered as shikha. My time. What's the reason? And this is the main point. The kivin, the koigaba, because since the owner is there, so you have the halacha that we said before, that makes this his courtyard, and it merits it for him. In other words, it removes the ultimate shikha that might apply to it because he already acquired it by being there next to the field. But once he already came into the city, then even if he recalls and at the end he forgets, it's going to be shikha. My time, what's the reason? Because he's not there to be zoich in it. So, like Rashi explains the Maskal of Be'ir in the middle, he says, this is how the Gemara explaining what the Tana was teaching. The Brisa said, Yochel lo yehi shikha. You would think if the guy's in town already, that it would not be shikha. What does that mean? When you're still in the field, that's where you need to have that you forgot it. But when it says v'loy be'ir, meaning you don't need v'shachachta, meaning because even if the workers forget it, that's also going to make it shikha. That's the difference. So al kapanim, that's what the Gemara says. That's the source for the halacha that you see that only if you're omid b'tzad tzedei in, but if you're not omid b'tzad tzedei not, that was the Gemara. That was the teaching of Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg that we opened up with. Our mission is only omid b'tzad tzedei, then you're going to acquire it. Says the Gemara, really? Mimai, from where do you know to explain the pasuk like this, and saying that this is what the Bryce is saying? Maybe the pasuk is just telling us a biblical decree, meaning the besodin have a shikha. In the field, it should be considered shikha, but you're have a shikha, and then in the city it's not going to be shikha. Meaning, as Rashi explains in Masal Dilma, maybe when the balabais came to town, his and the workers' shikha are nothing. And Rashi, Tais doesn't like this, but Rashi says, let's amend the brisa of Yochel Yehei Shikha. You would think it should be Shikha. And that's saying, no, it's not going to be Shikha in town because the pasuk says it's only Shikha in the field. Why are you interpreting it to say that only it's Zachar L'B'Seif Shechuach? Maybe it's very simple. Maybe the pasuk is just saying, in town it's not Shikha, in the field it is Shikha. So the Gemara says, no, it can't be. So Amakra, the pasuk says, you can't go back to take it. And the Brisa says, that's Rabbi Shikha Seir. That's including if you forget it in town. So don't go back is saying that means you're already in town. So you see that forgetting it in town is also considered a Shikha. So Gemara says, how could you say that? That's not true. That's not what the pasuk is teaching us. You need this pasuk to just say negative prohibition. The Torah tells you leave it. That's a mitzvah say. And the Torah says in negative prohibition, don't go back. But no one said go back means from town. So Gemara says, if that's the case, if you didn't go to town yet, then the pasuk should say lo sekechena, don't take it. My lo sashav, what's don't go back? So Rabbi Shikha, that's you already went home, you already went to town, and that's saying that even if you get it in town, that's what's saying. We said which case is that? That's zachal shechuach. That's why it's the case that we did explain, and that was the source for yomid tzadzdei in. That then he's going to be kaineh, and then it's not going to become shikha. But if he's not yomid tzadzdei, then he's not going to acquire, and therefore when the work is forgetted, it will be shikha. The Gemara says, but still, it's not true. You cannot learn that from leisashav to include shikha zeir. You need it because it's not like learn the Mishnah Masechtas Peya. The Mishnah there is discussing regarding when the guy who's harvesting forgets something that he's working on. So the individual starts harvesting from the beginning of the row, and he forgets what's in front of him and what's behind him. So the Mishnah differentiates. Shelef on what's in front of him that he didn't really get to yet, ain't shikha. It's not considered as a forgotten bundle, and he's still allowed to take it. Shalach, what's behind him, yes shikha, that is considered a shikha. Shuba bal tashav, you can't go back to take what you forgot. Zakal, this is the rule, which says zakal includes like on the corner somewhere. But kol shuba bal tashav, whatever is included in that you can't go backwards is shikha. Koshein bal tashav, whatever is not going backwards, it's forwards, and shikha is not shikha. But one thing is, you see that leishashuv is not coming to teach you, don't go back from town to the field. Leishashuv is just qualifying that it's whatever's behind you, not whatever's in front of you on the same row itself. So Ravashi says, you're right. But Amakra, the pasuk says that when it talks about the halacha of the matnas anim, it says, lager, layasam, v'lamana, yiyah. What's yiyah? It should be. Yiyah is a inclusionary terminology. Is lamrabais is including shikha seir, that when you forget it in town. And therefore, that's our source. Therefore, we know that the pasuk is not teaching us that there's no shikha in town. So then again, we're back to the pshat, that what is the pasuk teaching us? It's teaching us the case of Zachal Shechuach, and again, that's the halachic source of Review the Mishmal's teaching that we start off the Gemara with, that if you're there, then you could acquire it. Then it's not going to become shikha. But if you're not there, then it is going to become shikha, even from the workers forgetting it, like we said, the case of Zachar will be Saif Shechuach, which that's what Tyson Devimaz Zachal Shechuach explains. He says, in other words, he recalls at the time of the shikha in the beginning that the workers already forgot it. At the end, he also forgets. Whereas Shechuach Meikari, he explains, is when the workers forgot it, and he also forgot it. But this that he recalled at the time that the workers recall, that's not Zachal Shechuach, because if that's not the case, you would never have shikha ever, because when his field is full of bundles, he says, oh, I want my field to acquire for me. So that's what Tais just explains. Zachal Shechuach is that he recalls when the workers forgot in the beginning, and then at the end he forgets also. That's the way he explains. So Rashi seems to explain when the workers subsequently forget. But be that as it may, that was the case of that we'll have shikha when he's in town because he's not there on the side of the field. If he's there on the side of the field, his field would acquire it for him. Now it says the Gemara Ula says, like Yehuda, who explains the halach of a Mishnah, that this that we say when you see people running after Mציעא, after the broken deer, or after the birds that can't fly, and you say, Tais says you don't have to say, but you want your field to acquire for you, it acquires for you. Yehuda Mishmul qualified, and so too Ula says, it's only be standing on the side of the field. It's only be standing there on the side of the field. But however, Now, Ula said the same teaching. Now the Gemara asks, Eisrei Rebabba Ula. From Mishnah Masechtas Ma'aser Shein, the interesting story what happened. Ma'aser B'Mlil B'Zakenim. There was a story of Mlil and the elders, Shayiboim B'Svina. They were on a boat, and Amar Mlil said, which Rashi explains, Tais disagrees, Rashi explains he recalled that he didn't take off Ma'aser yet. Now that bothered him, because Talmid Chacham doesn't want to have untyped produce in his house. He doesn't know if his kids are going to eat and eat tavel. So he quickly wanted to take off Ma'aser where he was there on the boat. Tais disagrees because he says, well, if a guy's away for 1 day, it doesn't mean they took about Ma'aser already. So actually, Tais says a different pshat from Ben Tam. It's actually he took off Ma'aser already, but it was the year of beer, and he had to get rid of it. And that's the story that he explains that he brings a raya from a Mishnah Masechtas that was regarding the halachas of beer, and it's regarding that he wanted to quickly liquidate it, but not that he didn't take off Ma'aser. But be that as it may, so Rabbi Mlil said like this. He said, Isur shani asad lamud. He said, the Ma'aser that I'm going to end up measuring, nasan li Yeshua. Now, Rabbi Shua ben Chananya, who was with him on the boat, was a Levi. And he takes Ma'aser Rishon, as the Gemara says, Neichan of Yelav and Beis, that there was a story of Rabbi Shua that went to assist Rabbi Yochanan Gudguda to close the doors in the base of Mikdash. And he says, stop, go back. You're from the Meshoyerim, you're from the singers. I'm from the Meshoyerim, I'm from those who close the gates. And the Meshoyer Shashir, a singer that closed the gates, gets Misa. Oh, come on, we have our jobs. But one thing we knew that he was a Levi. So he says, let the Ma'aser be given to the Levi. And as a continued Talmud Beis, U'Mekoyma Muskaloi. And his place, the place of where the Ma'aser is, should be rented to Rabbi Yeshua. And as Rashi explains, he accepted from him the rental of the place, because that's what the Sefer over there teaches, that Niskablu Zeh Mezeh Sachar, that they paid wages from each other. Now, why did he do that? So that he could acquire the Ma'aser, because he wanted it that it should be his Chatzar that could acquire for him, because Metaltalin cannot be acquired only with either Meshicha or with the Chatzerah. So how's he going to give them the Ma'aser? By making it his Chatzar. Which Tosha says, why do you have to rent it? Why couldn't he just lend them or rent it through Chalipin? Why do you have to pay money for? Says Tosha that no, it's not true, that Sheila and Schiras are not acquired with Chalipin. So he couldn't have lent it to him. How you lending it to him? You have to go and give some money to create an acquisition. Al Kapanim, that's one thing. That was for Ma'aser Rishon. And the Isur Achar Shani Asad Lamed, and the other Ma'aser I'm going to end up measuring out, which Nasan Lakiva ben Yosef, which he was a Gabbai of the Matnas Aniyim, and that year was a Ma'aser Ani year, which year 3 and 6 of the Shemitah cycle is Ma'aser Ani. So let that be given to Akiva ben Yosef, that he could merit it for the poor. And the place where the Ma'aser Ani is rented to him. Says the Gemara, the question on Ula. You told me that for a field to acquire for you, you have to be oimid b'tzad sadeyu. Hello? They rented the field. But how is what's in the field going to be acquired to them if they're not standing there on the side? So Taisus, the bottom Taisus asks, he says, what are you talking about? The grain was in the house of Gamliel, as obvious from the Yerushalmi he brings, and Gamliel's house is protected, is mishtameres, so why'd they have to be there? Says Taisus, very interesting teretz. He says, what you can say is, for Bishua and Bekiva, it wasn't protected, because there's no separation between his grain and their grain. For them, it's not protected. So you didn't have the Ma'alochas Mishtameres. Now, let's discuss a different case, but that's how he answered that question. Now, so the question on Ula is, you told me a Chatzar could only be claimed if the guy's there, if it's not Mishtameres, so how exactly are they acquiring it? So Ula responded to the questioner very offhanded. He says, Dami Haimid Rabbanan, he says, it seems to be that this rabbi could like he never learned in his life. That was his answer. That's a machtavek. He didn't answer the question. Now, Kiyasa, when Rabbi who asked the question came L'Surah to Surah, he says to the Shivalite, he says, Hachim Ula, this is what Ula said, and this is what I asked him. He didn't answer me. So one of the rabbis responded and says, what are you talking about? Of course Ula was right. Gamliel gave it to Rabbi Shua and Rabbi Kiva with the kinya, what's called kinya agav. It wasn't that it was acquiring for them the place in the medium of like a chatzar, because even if he would have been makneh to them another courtyard that wasn't inside, they would acquire. Mishnah teaching Kedushin of Chavav and Aleph, Nechasim she'elam achrayas metaltlin could be nicked mechasim she'elam achrayas with karka, with kesef, meaning the moment you give the money because of the karka and metaltlin, or even if you're selling the karka, but the metaltlin giving as a gift, the metaltlin is acquired with the kinda karka without mashicha, as the Gemara learns on the Kedushin from V'yitlam Avim Matonis Rabbis Lekes Bazav Im Ar Mitzur with the cities. So says he's not kinder from the halacha of kinyan of chatzir. You're right. Chatzir can only be kinder if you're the oimed b'tzatzeh or to mishtabeches. When he sold, when he rented the karka, which is a kinyan of kesef, that kinyan you could be kinder the matana of the metaltlin. That's what's called kinyan agav. So it wasn't working as kinyan of chatzir. So the Gemara tells us not so simple. Rabbi Zeri accepted this answer that this rabbi had answered. Rabbi Abba, he was the one that asked this question on. He was the one who asked the question on Ula Machtavek with him. He didn't accept it as an answer. And Rabbi says Shaper Ovid to like Kibler. Rabbi Abba did very well that he didn't accept this answer. Why? What are you talking about? You think that they didn't have kerchiefs, these rabbis, that they all wore on their heads to make a kinyan of chalipin? Why did he have to accept from them monies? Ella, I'll tell you why. You know why kerchief doesn't work? Because Toivas Hana, this meiser that Imlil had, he doesn't own the meiser. It's not yours. It belongs to the Levi, belongs to the Aniyim. What do you have? You have the goodness of choosing the pleasure of who it goes to. In a mammon, that's not quote unquote money, liknis memenu chalipin, to acquire it from him with chalipin. In other words, you cannot say that, when Amlil takes that kerchief from Rebbe Kiva, from Yeshua, then the chalipin, the exchange, which is the meisers, is acquired to them wherever it is. No, because that's not his money. He only has Tevas Ana on it. He could choose who to give it to. That's not considered as quote unquote money that it could take effect in it, a kinyan of chalipin. That's why because why they do money? They should have done chalipin. I'll tell you why they didn't do chalipin. Because chalipin only works on mammon, and it's not mammon, it's only 10%. Sachanami. Here also, regarding the kinyan of agav, Tevas in the mammon, that's not money, liknas agav karka, to acquire it through the karka. In other words, when you do a kinyan on the karka, what you're calling agav, whatever kinyan with, let's say, money, that you're renting the karka, you can't acquire through that Toivas Hana. It's hefker, and when you rent a place, so you say, your chatzar could acquire in the medium of a chatzar, like other hefker. That's why he asked the question on Ula, meaning it must have been working through the medium of chatzar, because how could agav work? Agav works like a kinyan one will work on the kinyan of the other, but it's not mammon to make a kinyan on. If you say it's a hefker item because it belongs to the poor or belongs to the Levium, and Rabbi Shua or Rabbi Kiva, once it's their chatzar, will acquire it from hefker in their chatzar, I can understand how that works, but that's the difficulty in Ula. Ula said that it only works when you're amid b'tzad tzedeu. So Rabbi Abba asked the question of him, and Ula machtavek with him and said, this guy does not learn. Advice not read to learn. What do you mean I don't know how to learn? Of course I know how to learn. What do you mean? The Gemara gave an answer. The Gemara said, I'll tell you why, because it wasn't chatzar, it was kinyan agav. No, says Rava. Rabbi was correct in not accepting that answer. Kinyan agav doesn't work, because if it worked, the chalipin should work. Why are you making money and taking out banknotes and whatever? Macha chalipin. I'll tell you why chalipin doesn't work. Because chalipin only works on mammon. Here it's a Tevas Hana. So that's also why kinyan agav wouldn't work. It must have worked through chatzar.
But we said replacer said he had to get it out of his rishus because it was shas beer. It wasn't about the kinyan. He had to get it out of his rishus.
Right, but how?
He has to give the chatzar because otherwise it's still in his rishus.
I'm saying, but I think out of rishus doesn't mean literally in the property itself. It just has to be in the acquisition out of his rishus. I mean, someone else has to own it. Meaning, if a kohen gets it already, meaning if the Levi gets it, or I actually asked why.
Yours, but it's still on his property.
Yeah, that as long as the guy's a kohen it, so that would take care of the beer problem. As long as it's not, a guy could store it, Levi could keep his stuff by you, the Ani could keep it by you. That's okay. But the Gemara says actually no, velohi. It's not true. You have to help couple it because we're going back and forth here like a ping pong. The Gemara is saying rejecting, says not true. From this, you wanted to prove something. You wanted to say, what? Didn't they have a kerchief? So from there, you wanted to prove that Kinyan Agav also doesn't work. And it must have been Chatzar. And with Chatzar, you see not like Ula. It's not true. It's not a proof to learn out from there that Toivas Anah cannot be acquired with Chalipin and with the Kinyan Agav from Karka. It's not true. You could say that Metatlin could be acquired through the Kinyan Agav. And don't tell me you're shtickle Torah because of Toivas Anah. But then my question is, wait a second, so why do they have to be renting properties here? Why couldn't they just do Chalipin? I'll tell you why. Interesting answer. Matnas Kahuna, when we're talking about when you're giving something to a Kohen or to Levi or Meiser Ani, Nesinik Siva Bahu. The Torah says a terminology of giving. The Pasuk says in Devar B'chabav, V'nasata LaLevi. That's Meiser Rishon. Like Gerlias Mamona, that's Meiser Ani. Oh, that's why you cannot acquire it with a kerchief. Why not? Because Chalipin, when you do the kinyan of exchange, what is an exchange? Bartering is essentially the early processes of mekach. You take this, I take that. This guy's giving him his vessel, and he's getting this. So that looks like a mecher. Oh, that doesn't work. Nesina is a matana, is a one-way street. Mekach is a two-way street. So that's why Chalipin doesn't work. But to acquire the movable item in the medium through the dint of the renting of the karka, that's a bona fide giving, and therefore you're allowed to be makna the matnas kuna al gav hakarka, and therefore ula is resolved because that don't prove from me over here that you see that the chatzar is kinda, even though they weren't emedis b'tzad sedeyu, because it was not working through the medium of chatzar. What was it working? Through the kinyan agav. Then why didn't they do Chalipin? Not because Tevis is not Mammon. Because you can't do Chalipin, because Derech Mekavem has to be Derech Nesina. But Kinyan Agav is a Derech Nesina. That's one approach to resolve Ula. Another approach of Papa Amma, he said the truth is that it was kinda through the medium of Chatzar. But then we had a question on Ula. Well, if it's working through Chatzar, and again, Tais explained it's not Chatzar Mishtameres, so why didn't they have to be standing there on the side? How does it work like that? Says the Gemara, Das Acheres Makna Eisen Shani. When someone else is transferring it to you, that's going to be different. Here, Mili was being makna to them, these maestros that he had in his courtyard, they weren't acquiring it from Hefker. That gift is easier to acquire, and there it's going to work even though you're not standing there on the side of the field. Our Mishnah is from Hefker. Hefker is no one's being makna. You have to have a greater kinyan. Then you have to be on mitzvah today. When someone's makna to you, it's even if you're not on mitzvah today. It says, where do you get this from? Who says this? That now we learn in our Mishnah. Our Mishnah said, if he sees people running after this Mציעא, so he said, etc., that his chatz is going to acquire it for him. And he said that this deer that was going and these birds that were jumping, when our Mishnah says that his field's going to acquire it for him, it's talking about, for example, where is only if he could run after them and be able to catch them before they would leave his field. But if he wouldn't be able to catch up to them, then his field would not acquire it for him. Now, Yomi had the following question, and we're going to answer our question from his question. What's his question? Bimatana, if let's say these deers or these birds belong to a person, and they happen to have been in this guy's field. The guy made a upshare, and again back to upshare in his yard, and this guy brought his deer for the show, and the owner says he sees this guy's kid, the upshare boy, loving the deer. He says, you know what? I'm a tuna fadeh. Let it be for the birthday celebration. Everyone's all excited. It's a gift. Hey, what would the halacha be? Do you need to have? And now the deer starts running because the moment he gave up ownership, the deer felt abandoned by him. The deer is running. This guy has a few acres in his backyard. The deer is running. Do we need to have that the guy whose field it is, the guy whose yard it is, has to be able to run after and catch the deer? And if not, he would not be kind it. And then, therefore, the guy who gave the gift could back out, because he was never kohen yet, or not? That was the question Rabbi Yirmiyah asked. So Kibla Minei Rabbi Bar Kahana, Rabbi Bar Kahana, he accepted the question from Rabbi Yirmiyah. What does that mean? What do you mean accepted the question? A question is implying that there might be a difference over here between matana and hefker. And he says, you're right. He's pointing at something from his question, Shelas Chacham Chatzi Tshuva. By a gift, Av Bishurat Zacharein Ve'in Magian, even if they would run after the deer, they wouldn't be able to catch it, you would be koinit. My timer. What's the reason? What's the difference? Lav Mishum, the Dasacheres Maknois and Chan. Isn't it this principle that we're saying that, of course, when someone is transferring it to you, it's an easier type of a kinyan. You don't have to be able to catch it. So the Gemara rejects that and says, no. Amalei Rav Simi L'Rav Papa, he says, what do you do? How do you get? But we know by a divorce, the Dasacheres Maknois, so the husband, he's transferring the ownership of this document to his soon-to-be ex-wife. And yet, in spite of that, Ula says, when someone is throwing a get to his wife into her house or into her courtyard, Ula says clearly she has to be standing there on the side of her house or the side of her courtyard. But that's Das Acheres. Didn't you say Das Acheres Makna Oisan that you don't need to have Oimedis B'tzad Sedeyu? Says the Gemara, no. I mean, and you also said that not only that, you don't have to have that, you could even reach it and get it. Says the Gemara, no, Shani get it. Get it is different. Isa Bal Karcha. That he could do it forcibly, even though she doesn't even want to be divorced. So, since she doesn't want to be divorced, so you need her to be present to accept it. So the Gemara actually doesn't like this answer because the Gemara actually asks that the logic is the reverse. Maskeh Rav Sheish B'David says, well, I don't understand. Isn't that a kavachaymer? From this exact reason, you have to say now, for sure she'll work for other kinyanim. Why? That ma get, if by a get, the isa bal karcha, where you could force her, meaning where she's not agreeable to acquire it, and even so, you're saying her chatz is going to acquire it for her, and you're telling me, and it's only if she's standing there, then yes, iloi, if not. So matana de midaite. So by gift, where the person is not being forced, if the person would say, I don't want it, they wouldn't be kainit. Like Koshkin, isn't all the more so that when he says, I want it, that you have to be standing there on the side of the chatzar? How does it work? Even when Das Acheres Magna, but from Get should tell us that, what do you mean? You see that to the contrary, that you got to be present. So Elam Ravashi, rather Ravashi says, he says, you're right, don't make this dependent, that if you need to be by a get, that she has to be standing there on the side because you could force her. Rather, by a gift, the reason why you don't need to have that the person has to be standing next to their field is because, as continued top of Yud Beis and Aleph, Chatzar is Rabbi Mishum Yad. We brought this already previously, that V'nasan B'yado, we said V'nasan is Mikal Makim. We said that we learned out the halacha of Chatzar is included from the halachic status of Yad. But V'legocha Mishlichas. But it's not any less than shlichus. So what does that mean? So Rashi in the previous Amid says, when you have an agent that wants to do good for you, your chatzar is not any less than that. Meaning, if someone's agent would accept for them a gift, you don't think they would acquire it for them, even though the person's not standing next to their shliach? Her chatzar is also no different. So therefore, by a matana, which is a schus for her, we testify what's called anan sahadi, that she's pleased with this agent, and yes, it's going to acquire it for her like a shliach. But as the Gemara continues, Gabi get, why are we saying get that she has to be standing over there? That's different. The chayvul, it's a liability for her. Oh, in chavan la'ad meil b'fanav, you can only create a liability for a person only when it's in front of them, because she doesn't want her chatzah to be a shliach. So therefore, when she's standing there on the side, then by default, it's her hand, and her hand would acquire for her by get al karcha. If not, if she's not standing there, it's not her yad, because a yad is extended of the body. It's only when it's near the body, and there it's not going to be her shliach. Which Rashi here, the end is they discuss what this version of Rashi is. But in that discussion, Rashi says, so why did you need to have a riboy of yad if every chatzar works mitam shlichus? that's for cutting and katana that don't have halacha of shlichus. So then you needed to have chatzah mitam yadis rabbi. But wherever you have the halacha of shlichus, you have the halacha of chatzah, and so that's what he's saying. We're going to get that's a chayv. We're saying in chayv. In other words, a person cannot make a shliach to make a liability for a person without their awareness, and the chatzah also is that's not going to work as shlichus because it's, let's say, a chayv. So then you could say that it's only going to work when she's standing there to work as the halacha of yad. But as the Gemara ends off, matana the schusulai by gift which are married for the person. So great, so you can marry for the person when they're not there, and like Rashi here on top of the Amid says, and without their awareness, because on Sahadi we testify that the person is pleased with the shlichus of the chatzir. So therefore, when the person's not there on the side of the courtyard, well, you cannot compare it to a yad, because a yad has to be near the body. It's an extension, but like it has to be near you. So then we say that, okay, it'll work as the schia of a shlichus. Just like a shlich can be zech of a person when they're not there, a person chatzir could also be zech of them when they're not there. But by Mציעא, when the person's not there, where we don't learn it out, the schia mitam yad, because you're not near there, you cannot include it to work from shlichus, because by shlichus, says Rashi, you have either the das of the shelech or the das of the shliach. You have to have someone's das. A chatzir, you don't have not the das of the shelech because you're not aware of it, and you don't have the das of shlich because a chatzir doesn't have its own das. So that's why you need to have different gersois and Rashi, either chatzah mishtameres or das acheres makna. So at least you have the das of someone being makna, and that's why it works by matana, even though the person is not there. But al kapanim, by a matana, yes, then even if the person's not there, it'll be kind of, which the top places on this Amid says, he concludes, he says, so therefore like this. When it's similar to yad, that is, when the person's there on the side of the chatzir, that's like your yad, which is extension of your body, you're going to acquire even bal karchai. That's why it's going to work by get. Or even a katana, which we said the pasuk says, B'nosim b'yada includes even a minor who has a yad, is going to have a chatzir or kwaifa. Now, when she's not near a courtyard, where it's not similar to yad, then you don't say, oh, just like you don't have a halacha of yad, so you're not going to have a halacha of shlichus. No, that's what the Gemara is telling us. Chatzir is like gar from shlichus. So when it's a schus, like a matan, you're going to acquire, even if you're not near on the side of the courtyard, and even if it's not protected. By a Mציעא, where you don't have das acheres maknaisa, then you need it to be mishtameres. Now, regarding a get, which is a chayv, even if it's mishtamer, she's not divorced, because not better than shlichus, which ain't chavin la'adam, shaloi b'fanam. You can do any time, posting us.